Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. To understand what's going on right now in the Russian investigation and the Trump White House, you have to understand a key concept in the Russian toolkit, a key concept in the Russian intelligence community toolkit. It's called the Nadut, the dope, the dupe. The notion of the dupe was prominent in the Soviet era 70 years ago, and it remains prominent today. What in the world is a Russian dupe? He or she is a person who does things that help advance Russian goals. He or she is a person executing moves in a long-term program, the program of the Russian leader of the day. And most important, he or she is a person who doesn't have a clue that the Russians are using him or her as a pawn. According to an eye-opening book from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, The Kremlin Playbook, the Russian intelligence agencies keep an eye peeled for promising achievers. They look for upcoming business people, intellectual leaders, or politicians. Then they offer deals to entangle these rising stars and to influence their behavior. Which brings us to the real question that Republicans are ignoring about the Steele report. You remember the Steele report. It was compiled by a former British MI6 agent, Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele was a Russia expert. He was the best of MI6's Russia experts. In fact, he ran the Russian desk at MI6. Steele's work was done at the behest of Fusion GPS, a Washington investigative firm, and it was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now here's the problem. Republicans say that because Hillary paid for the Steele report, it is biased and no one should read it. In the Nunes memo of February 2nd, 2018, 2 weeks ago, Nunes explains that the report was done for Democrats. True. So, using the Steele report, he says, to obtain FISA court orders for the surveillance of possible Russian dupes like Carter Page is outside the pale of fairness and legality. But Nunes and his fellow Republicans miss the point. The question is not who paid for the Steele report. The question is this: is the Steele report true? Is it accurate? Strangely, the Nunes gang also criticizes the Steele report because it hasn't been fact-checked. It hasn't been verified. Yet it's the Nunes gang who are trying to prevent precisely this fact-checking. Fact-checking on what surveilling folks, well, let's do that again. Fact-checking is exactly what surveillance on folks like the Trump's former international expert Carter Page is all about. Fact-checking. The Steele report says operatives like Page have been duped by the Russians into acting as Russian tools, unwitting Russian tools. Is that true? The United States of America needs to know for security purposes. Here's the gist of the Steele report. Only one paragraph in a 32-page report is dedicated to the alleged incident in which call girls hired for Donald Trump piss on the mattress in a Moscow hotel suite where Barack Obama once stayed, thus showing Donald Trump's complete contempt for Barack Obama, according to this story. But it's only one paragraph. This is a hotel suite, according to the paragraph, rigged to pick up Trump's every word and breath. Now, that incident may be total fantasy. Who knows? It's not really relevant. The real deal is that Russian intelligence agencies spotted Donald Trump 8 years ago, and that the Russians have been cultivating Trump without his ever recognizing it for 8 years. Is that true? This is not collusion. Collusion is irrelevant. It is a red herring. This is manipulation. And the real question is whether this manipulation worked. It's whether the Russians succeeded in seducing Donald Trump and the others on his team, or any others on his team. Remember, the Russians purchased Trump's former intelligence head, General Michael Flynn. They paid Flynn $50,000 to give a dinner speech in Moscow with Vladimir Putin just a few chairs away at the head table. That can have influence. And remember, Donald Trump threw a major event, a Miss America pageant, in Moscow in 2013, less than 3 years before his campaign for president. What's more, when Trump's properties were in trouble, it looks like the Russians bought apartments in them and helped bail him out. They also hobnobbed with him, it appears, at Trump Tower. And most damaging, according to Newsweek, at least 63 Russian elites and oligarchs have invested around $100 million into Trump brand real estate in southern Florida. Now, the story in which this claim appears is headlined, "These Russian oligarchs are making Donald Trump rich." Surprisingly, the Steele dossier says one negative thing or one positive thing about Donald Trump. He so far has not accepted any of the Russian offers to help him build a Trump Tower in Moscow. But the key fact is this: Donald Trump has done remarkable favors for Moscow. He refused to implement new sanctions that Congress voted against Russia. He has said really nice things about Vladimir Putin, who he apparently genuinely admires. He has followed up on Barack Obama's policy of allowing the Russians to become the dominant force in the Middle East. He has taken the world's leading superpower, Donald Trump has, America, and has made it a laughingstock. Believe me, when I'm overseas, for example in Kuala Lumpur, I can feel the way our country has sunk to a third-rate country in the eyes of Asians. Donald Trump has also opened the field of world leadership to Vladimir Putin and to Putin's military ally, Xi Jinping, the leader of China. And Trump has sworn to high heaven that the Russians were not involved in the 2016 presidential election. Or, as he puts it, there was no collusion. Yet it was the release of more than 30,000 of Hillary Clinton's emails that won Donald Trump the election. And Trump used those missing emails as a campaign issue over and over again, and they were a gift from Moscow. What's more, Donald Trump thought it was credible that the hack of Hillary's emails had been pulled off by the Russians. In one of his campaign rallies, he begged the Russians to release more of Mrs. Clinton's emails. Donald Trump did that. In the old days of the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, Russians had dupes in the American intellectual community, in the American intelligence community, and in the State Department. Dupes and actual spies. In 1958, the most extreme right-wing organization in America, the John Birch Society, was obsessed with the Russians' ability to dupe. Hang on, this paper is giving me trouble as usual. I need a professional paper turner. So, in 1958, the most extreme right-wing organization in America, the John Birch Society, was obsessed with the Russians' ability to dupe Americans. The John Birch Society was obsessed with the Russian ability to seduce American citizens into advancing Russian goals. And the John Birch Society was obsessed with Russia's ability to keep many of their dupes in the dark about the fact that Russia was using them as pawns, totally unwitting pawns. The Steele memo indicates that one of those dupes may be with us today, and that he's in the White House. That unwitting dupe could be Donald Trump. Is the Steele memo right? And now, for that infamous little off button, and this is Howard Bloom talking to you from the future, it's your job and my job to make. Let's see if I can actually find, there it is, the button.